So, as a student of success, you've likely heard about the importance of consistency over and over again, consistently, haven't you? You hear you've got to write down your goals and consistently look at them. You have to consistently create things and deliver value, or you've got to consistently practice habits in order for them to stick. So you hear this consistently. But what do you personally believe about the power of consistency? And do you understand why consistency is such a powerful force of change, enough to use it consistently in your life? All right, I'm done using it too much, I promise. But instead of telling you to be consistent and why it's so awesome and so important, let's kind of dig beneath the surface and examine the mechanics of how consistency works using an illustration or a metaphor. So to begin, let's define the elements of how consistency works in our metaphor here, and especially in relation to achieving a goal. So here are some elements that we're going to use in our metaphor to explain the mechanics of how this works. First of all, you have the goal, and you can think of this as a ball sitting on top of water. So this ball has buoyancy, which means that it floats. Very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so that's the goal. Number two, the second element in our metaphor is time. And in this illustration, time is like a body of water. And you'll see how that is the case as we move along in explaining this metaphor. And then finally, you have the activator of awesome. And this is at the bottom of the water. And again, this may not be clear at the moment, but you'll see how this plays a role in the power of consistency in just a moment. Next, let's look at how success is achieved in this illustration using this particular metaphor. So to achieve a goal or to adopt or change a habit, it has to come in contact with that activator of awesome. So you have the goal at the top of the water at the moment, but in order to really achieve it, it has to move past the surface of the water and get down through that water and reach the activator of awesome. Now, when it does this, that thing, whether it's a new habit, changing an old habit, or achieving a goal, that thing starts becoming a reality very, very fast. And this is because the activator of awesome represents the moment in time when things begin to really click in your brain along your journey to achieving that goal or changing that habit. So you begin to think differently at that point in time, or you start becoming more creative, or your skill level takes a leap, whatever it may be, but something just clicks. And as mentioned earlier, goals float. So to get that goal in contact with the activator of awesome requires some effort. You have to consistently push that goal toward the activator of awesome. And if you've ever tried to take a ball and push it down through water, you realize that it requires some effort. It's the same kind of thing that's going on here in this illustration, in this metaphor. So it all starts with that push. So you have the desire to achieve something, such as a goal, so that ball appears on the top of the water. And initially, you push that goal toward the activator of awesome by reviewing and connecting with that goal or practicing that habit on a daily basis. So you connect with it on an emotional level too. But if you're like most people, what happens? Well, after 2 or 3 days or even a week, you stop pushing. You stop pushing that goal, or in this case, in our metaphor, that ball towards the activator of awesome. And you stop reviewing or connecting with that goal and practicing that habit after 2 or 3 days, perhaps. Why? Well, because you're tired or you don't have time today. And so what do? You reason with yourself, well, I'll just pick up tomorrow. I'll start doing it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and guess what? You're still tired. You still don't have time, or whatever it may be, and you miss another day. And so what happens after that? You say, well, you know what? I missed a couple of days. I'm going to pick up next week on Monday. On Monday, I promise I'm going to do this, and so on. And eventually, oftentimes what happens is you stop pushing. You stop consistently connecting with your goal or practicing your habit. You give up. And it seems innocent enough that you'll just put it off and get to it at some point in the future. I mean, life gets in the way, right? But here's the key idea that you need to remember is that each day that you're inconsistent about reviewing your goal or practicing your new habit, even though you may have pushed it down into that water close to the activator of awesome to some degree, each day you're inconsistent, that goal starts to float back up to the top of the water. Remember, it has buoyancy. It wants to float back to the top if you don't push it down. So with inconsistent practice, it starts floating back to the top of the water. And what that does is it moves that goal farther away from the activator of awesome. And if you miss several days practicing or reviewing that goal, the goal will eventually, over time, float all the way back to the top of the water. And at that point, it's no closer to being achieved than when you started. And any time or effort that you put into achieving the goal up to that point is essentially wasted because you've wiped out all your progress, because you have to consistently push it toward that activator of awesome until something kicks in. So to achieve anything, a daily, consistent push is a must. You push the goal down on one day and it floats up just a tiny bit. Then the next day you push it down some more with a review or a practice, and it will float back up a little bit more, and so on. So you keep pushing it down a little bit more each and every day that you're consistent. And eventually, if you are consistent, what will happen is that goal will reach that activator of awesome. And that's when you're going to experience success. That's how consistency works. So here are some next actions. First of all, you want to really appreciate that consistent reviews of your written goals or practicing of new habits is the only way to achieve them. Consistent. Hit and miss, no matter what may be the reason, hit and miss, that approach doesn't work, and it's a waste of time. If you consistently practice something for a week, but then you miss 2 weeks, guess what? When you start back up again, if you start back up again, you're starting pretty much from the beginning, all over again. You've wasted that week that you were consistent. So hit and miss doesn't work. And it's important to take small actions consistently. That's a bigger deal than it is to make big pushes occasionally. So in other words, and here's an example that you may relate to, but it's better to exercise just a tiny bit for 10 minutes consistently every day for a month than it is to do this big push and work out for an hour or so only once a week. Have you ever been guilty of that? You say, you know what? I've missed several days of doing this exercise or walking a little bit. So what I'm going to do next Monday, I'm going to spend 2 hours in the gym. Well, it's those small, consistent behaviors that are going to have a more powerful effect, not only on your results, but your mindset than those big pushes. Big pushes typically don't work. So don't buy into that idea. And what you want to do is really examine areas of your life where you want to grow and achieve something specific. Look at everything that you're doing. Where do you want to achieve something? And then identify small, tiny habits that you can adopt and small actions that you consistently take in order to make those things a reality over time. That's the power of consistency.